Hello, today I'll be going over the history and policy of middle school education and how this pertains to me as a future middle school educator. So, the need for middle schools or junior highs first emerged in the 1960s during racial desegregation. There simply was not enough space in just the elementary schools and high schools, which created the need for junior high schools. However, these junior high schools unfortunately seemed to just become a miniature version of senior high schools, which meant they were not developmentally responsive to the unique needs of adolescents. Fundamentally, young adolescents who are in the sixth through eighth grade are different than older adolescents who are already much further along in their adolescent journey. Therefore, a need emerged from middle schools, which were much different than junior high schools because they were more aware of the needs of adolescents. This notion first came about in 1963 and was presented by William Alexander, who is often considered the father of middle level education. Eventually, the movement caught speed and was picked up by a group called the National Middle School Association, the NMSA, and the NMSA committee went on to write This We Believe, which was published first in 1982, but went on to be republished in 1995, 2003, and 2010. This We Believe is a fundamental piece of literature in the middle school community. It outlines middle school teaching philosophies and policies that middle school teachers can follow, and it helps really explain why younger middle school adolescents are different than high school adolescents. It's built off different academic domains, including developmental psychology, democratic education, core curriculum, progressive education, and essentially it just urges middle school teachers to really get to know the students that they have in their classroom. The reason why middle schoolers are so much different is just because they are first entering adolescence. There's neurochemical development going on in their brain. There's new social environments that they're facing. They're beginning to develop their identity through different stages. And so, based off all of these things, we clearly must take a different approach to the middle level classrooms. For myself as a teacher, once I become a middle level educator, I would like to approach my classroom with an asset versus deficit based view on things, which means just because my students will be early teenagers doesn't mean I will view them in a negative way or see them as just a raging mess of hormones. Rather, I'll view those things as an asset, meaning that I will be the one to help guide them through that difficult time, or even just that that time is new for them, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. And so, in terms of policy, the way I will actually implement that in my classroom will be by fostering ways for me to really get to know my students, fostering ways for my students to come to me if they need help. Based off the research I've done in this project, I've learned that there's a great need for more comprehensive social work in this country, specifically for children and middle schoolers and the childhood welfare program. So one policy I could implement in my classroom is that if I know a child is in the welfare system, perhaps I could work with their social worker to offer a more comprehensive level of care for that student. Even on a more simple level, I would like to enact policy in my classroom that will ultimately just create a positive adolescent experience for my students. I will try to implement creativity, and I will try to allow my students to be creative in the ways that they explore their identity. Thank you for tuning in to this special episode of Academic Abby, where we looked at middle school level education, why it's relevant, and how it will implement itself into my own classroom. Thank you.